we've got Dutch Coleman from WCCP FM Talk Sports Clemson. So, Mr. Coleman, thanks for being with us this afternoon. We appreciate you joining us on the program. And just tell us a little bit about what you do over at WCCP 104.9.
Well, they'll probably say not much at all. But we have the sports talk show, 9 to 12. It's called the James Turn Show. And we basically talk about sports nationally with obviously a Clemson-centric focus being the flagship station for Clemson University and all its sports. So we pretty much just talk about anything and everything. We have callers, texters. We have a text line. We interact with folks on Twitter and however they want to get in.
Yes, sir, and y'all do a great job with that. It's an awesome show to listen to because you do focus mainly on Clemson. But just talk about, I know you've probably been asked this 1,000 times since that, but just give us your reaction, with the South Carolina game. Heck, you've got to deal with all those Carolina fans calling in, talking about SEC. They couldn't even win the East. And, they had Florida and Georgia have like 4 wins, so still couldn't do it.
I give them a hard time all the time. I generally take the rivalry a lot differently. A lot of the people that I, joke with and play around with that are Gamecock fans are friends of mine. So I don't have the venom and the hatred that's spewed by a lot of people. It's good to have a healthy rivalry where we can go back and forth at each other and really want to win. I hate losing at anything. I don't care if we're playing checkers. I hate losing, and I definitely hate losing to the Gamecocks. But I don't have the vitriol and the harm that some of them want to do to one another. I just don't get all that. But this past week was, I'd say Monday through Wednesday, was challenging. And the funniest thing, no one wanted to actually talk about the game. They wanted to just talk about each other and basically insult one another and all those types of things without even focusing on the game and the fact that they had won a football game.
Yes, sir. And talk a little bit about, we were talking earlier, you can't have 6 turnovers and win a game on the road, especially playing a team like South Carolina. Connor Shaw, you've got to give him credit. He made the third down runs when he had to, and you could see the frustration in Venables. But, heck, we couldn't do anything about it. You couldn't stop him. You couldn't get off the field.
Yeah, leading up to that game, the entire year I said 2 words, Connor Shaw. I said I can't explain what this guy does or how he does it, but I always liken him to that 40-year-old pitcher that you see in the movies. He's the guy who's out there and he doesn't have anything left, and the skipper comes over to him and says, "Give me what you got." He goes, Skip, my arms, it's dead. I can't do anything. My fastball's about 80 miles per hour right now. He's saying, "Just give me what you got. Just throw me some junk up there." And the guy's throwing everything he has, every pitch. He's struggling, and he's still striking people out, or he's getting people to hitting the double plays, and he's about to fall apart. And he gets it done, and that's what Connor Shaw does. It's not pretty. You can't describe how he's going to do it before the game. You can just talk about it afterwards. And he's been the bane of our existence. And I tell you what, man, I'm glad that guy's going to be finished. And we can maybe just move on from the whole Connor Shaw era, I'll call it. and you're right, the 6 turnovers, we were very fortunate after 4 turnovers to really still be in that football game. And to me, that spoke to I guess it's proof that it wasn't that South Carolina was a great football team. We were playing as bad as we could possibly play, and we had an opportunity to win that game. It was 17-17, and we were playing horribly. So I think that spoke to the fact that we were largely killing ourselves, and give those guys credit. But, hey, you got to look in the mirror and see what you could have done, and I think a lot of the blame was on ourselves.
Exactly. And talk a little bit about, Todd Boyd, obviously his last regular season game, never beaten South Carolina. So how do you think that affects his legacy at Clemson? He's done great things here. ACC title. Hopefully it doesn't put too much of a, negative stain on it. But how do you think that affects his legacy here at Clemson?
I think it does only because human nature says it does, but I think sometimes human nature ignores the facts. And I think, do we say Sammy Watkins is not the greatest receiver to ever play here, or name a random position where you think we're really talented at and say, well, he can't be the greatest at that position because he never beat South Carolina. The quarterback gets way too much credit, way too much blame. The kid is a phenomenal talent at the quarterback position. I just don't get the people saying that he never beat South Carolina. Well, it's 5-year streak, right?
It is now.
How many years did Boyd start at Clemson?
I think it's, what did he start, 3 or 4 years,
He's
Brent?
a 3-year starter.
Yeah, 3-year starter, yeah.
So that tells me, if my math is correct, that we didn't beat him 2 years before that when he wasn't the starter. So this isn't an indictment on Taj Boyd. If anything, it's an indictment on the program, not Taj Boyd. And each one of these players are part of the program collectively. So we need to look at the program as a whole when it comes to beating South Carolina or not beating South Carolina. You know, those guys that started his freshman season, you know, his redshirt season, you know, those guys are losing to South Carolina too. This isn't a disease that Taj Boyd somehow brought to Clemson. So we need to really, you know, forget about blaming one individual and let's work on fixing this problem as a whole.
Yeah, and we're just talking about this season so far with Mr. Coleman from WCCP. I was just going to ask you, I know a lot of people, I'm not buying into it, but they're kind of saying Dabo's on a hot seat after losing to South Carolina for 5th time, and I'm not buying into that personally. But what do you think about that? Just people saying that since he can't be South Carolina, we need to get a new coach, which I don't agree with at all.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I think, you know, there's a lot of times that we beat South Carolina in our history, and it didn't amount to much of anything. I think right now it's strange, but we're losing to South Carolina, and we seem to be progressing as a program. And it's strange because if you had asked me if a coach could ever lose to South Carolina 2 times in a row, you know, I'd be like, oh, he'd be on a hot seat. I would never guess 5 he would still be here. But obviously good things are happening. The program is growing because there's no way you can distract Clemson fans long enough with smoke and mirrors to lose 5 in a row. So obviously he's doing some great things with the program. He's still young, and the program's still young with his control. And I know him personally, he has some fantastic things in mind for this program. I think we need to let it play out. And I tell you what, South Carolina, you know, they've been beating us these few years. They haven't been accomplishing much outside of beating us, much like we were doing when we were beating them. So I think we need to get around to the point of refocusing on our rival. But I think we have some other things structurally that we need to get together to get this program on solid ground so that we can return to the days of beating them. And I'll tell you one more thing about that. A few years ago, I saw South Carolina doing that when Coach Bowden was here. It seems like they were focusing on some systematic things, some recruiting, some things that they seem to have ignored, cleaning up the program from a behavioral standpoint, character-wise, and they did a little better. And while we were beating them, they were building. So I'm hoping the same thing is happening now with Dabo getting the reins, that while he's building from the inside out, we're getting ready to reemerge rivalry-wise, but we have implanted ourselves on the national scene. They don't have a BCS victory or game over there. They don't have a conference title over there. While we do have those things, we need to, focus on the rivalry again. But I really appreciate the way Dabo is working from the inside out.
That's right, and I thought somebody made it. I was listening to y'all's show the other day, and I think a caller made a great point about, when Clemson had Bowden, you'd win the games versus South Carolina, but then you go lose to like Wake Forest, and that's what South Carolina's kind of done is they've beaten Clemson, but then they go and lose to Tennessee, and you can't win the East.
Absolutely.
So I thought you made a great point when Georgia and Florida, they're kind of the perennial powers of the East. When they get back on top, it's going to be a lot harder for South Carolina to win the East. So, but who knows? So.
Another point is that the quarterbacks in the past, going back to Taj and going back to Dabo's legacy, even. There hasn't been a quarterback or a Clemson coach that has faced the talent and the progress that is the South Carolina football program right now. So it's kind of unfair. And there was a stat out there with Saban and how Saban's never beat an Auburn team that had more than 8 or 9 victories. I can't remember which one it was. So he only beats Auburn when they win less than 8 games. He's never beat a formidable Auburn team. So. Let that sink in for a second. I mean,
that's right, exactly.
And so Dabo has only had to deal with good South Carolina football, not our daddies and our mommies South Carolina.
And Spurrier, ask Peyton Manning about beating Steve Spurrier. Come on. He's a great coach. I don't, whether he's at South Carolina, he's a great coach. He's the reason. He'd probably call him. Venables changed it up, but I thought he called a pretty good game the other night. He switched it up on Clemson. I don't think they saw it coming. So
he did. And, I think I'm a pretty smart guy when it comes to the X's and O's of football. And I will put myself up against some of these guys that are coaching these days. But I tell you what, Steve Spurrier could get a napkin and probably just get his guys to huddle around him, and he beat me up and down the field if I try to go against that guy. He is an intelligent football coach. He figures stuff out on the fly. If he hadn't figured it out before the game, he figures it out during the game, and you got to respect that guy.
Exactly, and just talk a little bit about possible bowl games for Clemson. What have you been hearing on that front? And I know we lost the 5-star, I believe it was Wednesday, to Tennessee, but a little bit touch on recruiting a little bit if you could.
Well, recruiting is great. I mean, we're going to have our disappointments when you get in there with the big guys and you're going after the Malones of the world. That's the 5-star receiver from Tennessee. I knew going into it was going to be tough, but Dabo and them are not afraid to go into somebody's backyard and try to steal their one guy. And he was their one guy. He's Mr. Football in Tennessee. He's the savior for Tennessee football. I'm sure that's what they were selling him, much like the C.J. Spiller thing. And I know that's why Dabo and them, they don't run away from stuff like that, because they do have the C.J. Spillers. They do have the Tony Stewarts they got out of Florida and stuff like that. So they're not afraid to go in there and fight those battles. But it was going to be very difficult to get a guy like that out of Tennessee with what they were selling him, him being the future of the state, him revitalizing the program. And we know in big-time sports, man, if you're that 5-star kid from the state, man, they'll act like your family's going to be ostracized and destroyed if you don't commit. So, I commend any child, because they're still children, that can emerge from that, much like Spiller did, and still go with their heart, if it does, in fact, go against all that. We're doing great. Of course, we got the number 1 quarterback coming in, and if we got a commitment from him tomorrow, everyone would be so excited. But the good news is we got a commitment a long time ago, so we don't have that momentum. But if he was a silent commitment for the past 2 years, and then he announced this weekend, it would be this image that recruiting is great. Oh, everything's great. Oh man, look at Dabo. Well, he secured some really good players early on, so we don't have the image that we're kicking everyone's butt in recruiting, but we're doing just fine. There's still some guys coming down the stretch. A 5-star linebacker out of Georgia, Raekwon McMillan, that we're going to be fighting hard for. And so, we're fine. The future of this program is bright, and I'm looking forward to every bit of it.
What have you been hearing on, I guess the Orange Bowl front and maybe the Chick-fil-A Bowl? What have you been hearing about that?
Yes, I actually have only been hearing one thing, the Orange Bowl. That's what I've been hearing. Yeah, I think everyone's focused on the Orange Bowl, and I think that's the way it should be. We're a good enough program where, if the Orange Bowl didn't happen, we'd definitely find a home somewhere. But we got all our energies, as you should, on the Orange Bowl. We have this massive campaign of trying to convince the Orange Bowl that we're their guys and they need to pick us, and the possible matchup with Alabama has intrigued everyone. And I'm not one that's afraid to face an Alabama, because while Alabama's a good football team, a great football team, they have their weaknesses against what we do.
Exactly.
There's a reason that people say, well, you give Nick Saban 30 days to prepare for you, and this and that, and he's going to shut you down. Well, Johnny Manziel and his spread offense kicked his butt last year. And then he had 365 days to prepare for it, and he really didn't stop it this year. They just outscored him. But Johnny Manziel and that spread offense, he's always shown a weakness against the spread or any version of the spread, and that's what we do. So we have a fighting chance. Our defense is tougher than it has been, and so people are worried about us getting embarrassed on a national stage. And I'm not that type of guy. I'm ready to fight anybody. I don't care how big he is and how bad they think they are. Let's go. Let's get it on.
Well, I mean, even if you played Alabama, even if you didn't win the game and kept it close, but people that say we're going to get drilled, Saban doesn't like the high tempo because he can't stop it. You saw that. I never thought I didn't think Auburn was going to beat Alabama last week, but they were able to run the ball, and, we kind of run the same offense that Malzahn runs, so who knows?
Absolutely. And you said it. Who knows? These people who are talking about what's going to happen before it happens, they need to go somewhere else. They need to get out of here. We need people that are in the very least are saying, who knows? Let's get it on. Flip the coin. Let's go. Because, again, they haven't shown the ability to stop that. What we've done is built up our defense to the level of respectability where we feel like we can hold our own. And if we score 40 points on Alabama, we score 35 points on Alabama, then they're going to have to match it against our defense. And I like our chances with our defense.
I do too, and thanks again for joining us on Checking Southland Sports. You do a great job with the James Turn Show. You can find him 9 to 12 every weekday on WCCP 104.9. And just one request: that y'all need to throw some old Motown or some classic rock on that bumper music in there. You can't get any of that.
You know what? I'm the old guy on the show. So
that's right.
I'm trying to take over the music.
There you go.
They're fighting me.
Okay, well, just tell them look in the history books.
I want to give you guys a shout out. When I was a student at Clemson, I was on WSBF, but it was more of a hip hop music period. But I do remember those days, and I have fond memories. So you guys, good job over there.
All right, well, we appreciate it, and we'll have you back on definitely after the bowl game. And thanks again for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right. Dutch Coleman from WCCP 104.9 and